Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our webinar on EIB Global as part of the series that's being organised by the EIB Institute for EU Foundations. I'm speaking to you from a very sunny Luxembourg, the headquarters of the EIB Group, and we're very pleased to welcome those online and those for whom we are recording this message who will read it and hear from us later on. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Richard Amor. I am the Director of Partnerships at the EIB, and I'm joined here by Soraya Tricki, who is our Director of International Partners on the operational side of our business. So just as a few bits of housekeeping before we dive in, this webinar is recorded and will be reused in the future. Please be aware. Of course, should you wish not to be recorded, do feel free to disconnect. The recording and the transcript, as I say, will be made available and will be circulated after the event. There is some time at the end for Q&A should you wish, so please do take any time to note down any questions and put them in the chat, and we'll be happy to take them. And of course, if we reference any documents, we will paste those in the chat, and we will also make those available when the webinar is released. I shall, of course, also be very respectful of people's time and will be keeping us moving throughout the webinar today to make sure that we keep to our schedule. Okay, so let us move and kick off straight away. And we are turning to the topic, which is EIB Global. And we are the part of the European Investment Bank Group that works on operations outside of the European Union. Before we dive into that, the main part of today, just as a very quick reminder, some of the information that you will have already received in last week's webinar on the EIB Group. Just as a quick reminder, we have the European Investment Bank. We finance EU policy-aligned projects inside and outside of Europe by way of loans, by way of equity investments, by way of guarantees, and also with an advisory service as well. We have the European Investment Fund, a subsidiary of the European Investment Bank, which supports small and medium-sized enterprises inside Europe by improving their access to finance, again, via guarantees, equity investments, and other financial instruments. And there'll be a webinar on the EIF, the European Investment Fund, in the coming weeks. The EIB Group, just as a reminder again, is owned by the 27 European Union member states, and is the largest multilateral development bank in the world by portfolio and also by lending volumes. This year, we will be expecting to lend between 90 and 100 billion euros. And 10% of that is, I might say, and we are probably biased, the most interesting part of the EIB Group's work, which is the activity outside of the European Union via EIB Global, or what we call GLOW. And we wanted to show you a short video to kick off, which will give you a bit of an overview of what EIB Global is all about. So Melanie, please, could you launch the video?
The world may seem to be unpredictable and changing fast. That's why it's important to build stable partnerships with people around the globe, to help them become prosperous, to bring them security from famine and drought, to let them know what we stand for. In Ukraine, the European Investment Bank Group works to rebuild, protect, and put the country on a path to European Union accession. An emergency package is helping to heat homes during the winter. We're also keeping schools open for children, modernising hospitals, and empowering businesses to remain competitive and focus on the future.
The potential for the single industry banking sector will overall, but it is investment in your future and how.
A vaccine manufacturing plant in Senegal is helping countries across Africa respond to future health crises. Global projects like these are possible only when we work with European partners, countries, multilateral organizations, philanthropic institutions, United Nations agencies. We are always stronger together. Investing in the right projects, That's how we make the biggest impact on people's lives. Take water, for instance. We bring safe drinking water and sanitation to millions of people each year.
بعد مشروع وادي العرب الموعد ثابت يوم محدد يجيبوه. هذا كتير كويس، تكون انت خلص عارف تروح تفتح الحنفية خلص اجت المي اوكي راح نفط.
Together with the European Commission, EIB Global will mobilise 100 billion euros by 2027. From solar power for remote rural communities to low-carbon transport for cleaner urban centres. Our projects address the most pressing global challenges and build a sustainable future for Europe and the world.
Great, thank you very much. I think that video really captures very well what EIB Global, what GLOW is all about. So look, now I would like to, I've been speaking for too long, I'd like to pass the floor to Daraya, who will tell us a little bit more about GLOW's policy objectives. And maybe also perhaps you can give us some projects and examples of what we are doing outside of Europe. And just as a reminder, Daraya, you're the director of the International Partners department here in EIB Global, and you're responsible for financing public sector and private sector clients in Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and the Pacific. So, Daraya, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Richard. So, as Richard said, we are a unique institution that is owned by the 27 EU member states. We pursue and we implement the EU policy priorities, but we are also part of the Multilateral Development Bank family, and that gives us scale. As you can see on the slide, we are actually active in almost all the geographies around the world. You see that we are basically investing in Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia Pacific, Latin America, and North Africa, in the EU neighboring countries. So while, as Richard said, most of our investments are focusing on the European Union, we're also serving and with large scale the rest of the world. Roughly, we invest about 8-9 billion annually on these geographies. Sub-Saharan Africa remains the largest recipient of our financing, about 2 billion on a yearly basis, followed by about the same amounts, 1.2-1.3 billion in Asia and Latin America and the Caribbean, and the Eastern neighborhood, Ukraine, the Western Balkan, and Turkey. Of course, through the idea is not only to provide large volume of financing, but to ensure that this is done with quality. And Richard will be speaking later about some of the impact and the results that we are very proud of. So we do follow a very rigorous process. We work very closely with partners, including multilateral development banks, including European agencies, philanthropies, and that's one of the reasons we were very excited to have this webinar today, to also explore what we could do together and deliver together a greater impact. Now, in terms of the policy priorities, we are demand-driven. We try to be very responsive. So you know that the European Union flagship strategy outside the EU is called the Global Gateway, but at the same time, there is continuous dialogue between the countries and the EU to identify what are the needs and the priorities. While being selective, we really try to focus on what really is likely to deliver the highest impact and value added from us as an EIB through our financing, the technical expertise, and also the collaboration that we can have with partners on the ground. So we ensure that we do not follow a one-size-fits-all approach. So, for example, in Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, we'll focus on the provision of the very critical infrastructure that, like access to water, to energy. You know that in some countries, I mean, I'm just thinking out a country like Burundi, where access to energy could be as low as 13%. So provided energy could be a game changer, both for the citizen, but also for the private sector and the economy of the country. We can also focus on delivering, supporting the local SMEs, creating jobs, focusing on youth and women, which are some of the important also values for the EU. In Latin America and Caribbean, we can focus on things like, helping the climate action, in flagship like protecting the Amazon, but also the more broadly agenda of the just energy transition and ensuring that we move to a cleaner energy mix.
Fantastic, thank you. I think that's a really good overview of those policy objectives and the direction of travel, the responsiveness to demand, and that kind of targeted policy engagement by region, really working out what is most relevant in the different parts of the world. And maybe actually, if I might then, just to follow up on that, is perhaps you could give us a couple of examples, some very specific project examples that illustrate some of that kind of that policy framework you just talked about. It's always much easier when you talk about projects.
Indeed. Now we move from theory to action.
Exactly.
But perhaps, Richard, one thing that I also want to clarify. You have seen on the video some of the nice also example, and I will be elaborating on a few more. But I want to clarify that the EIB is not in the business of humanitarian assistance. So you have seen on the video that we are very active in Ukraine. It's one of our priorities, but we really focus on what we do best, which is investment that are strengthening the resilience of the country throughout through this very critical time. So this is our niche. So I wanted also to clarify because there might be also questions coming this way. Now, let me give a few concrete examples illustrating what we do. So as Richard said, we are a Luxembourg-based institution. In my team, I have about 50 loan officers, but we are also trying to the extent possible to be closer to the clients, to our partners on the ground. So we have about 30 offices outside the European Union that are serving our clients through either country approach or a regional, what you call the hubs approach. So a few exciting examples. I mentioned earlier that one of our priorities is to work on private sector development with the aim to support the development of economic opportunities with focus on youth, on women, which are very often underserved. So for example, in Mauritania, we have been working with local banks, providing very valuable long-term financing, which is often missing, to facilitate the investment of local SMEs, to create jobs for youth, for women. And this is actually something that we are very proud of. We had the recent visit actually from the European Commission to one of these, to the project that have been funded. And through this line, we have actually created and sustained more than 3,000 jobs. So this is something that we are very proud of. And I mean, in the same spirit, we have been working with Zimbabwe. You know that Zimbabwe is the country that is facing debt distress, where the government cannot take loans. So we've been also very actively working with the local banks to provide much needed long-term financing to support the local private sector, create jobs, economic opportunities. I had the personal chance to visit some of these very amazing farms that are today growing blueberries. So you should, next time you will be shopping blueberries in the European supermarket, check the origin. It might be coming from Zimbabwe. You never know. It might be funded by one of our beneficiaries. Of course, we do not, our toolkit includes different financial instruments. So I just gave the example of the lines of credit, which very often focus on private sector, on SMEs. But we also work through sovereign loans to governments to provide and help them develop infrastructure. One of the exciting programs that we are currently working on is the development of the access to water and the reliability of water infrastructure in Bangladesh. It's one of the largest programs in the world, 1.5 billion, with what we call the Team Europe, meaning that there are other European players that are involved. We are providing a loan of 300 million as EIB to support 2 projects, and we are very, very proud actually of being able to make a difference in the life of the citizen. Maybe moving to something slightly different, and I'm sorry, I know I can go on forever, but just two more examples. As I said in the beginning, we're trying to be demand-driven and responsive to the specific needs. So, of course, we do work on large-scale countries and projects, but at the same time, we very much also care about the smaller entities, like the small island development states. So one example that I'm personally very proud of is a technical assistance grant that we have provided to Kiribati. For those of you who do not know what is Kiribati, is a small island in the Pacific whose capital is likely to disappear because of the rising water level. So what we have done is that we have provided this technical assistance grant to help them assess the feasibility of developing a port and economic activity in another atoll that they have identified. So basically planning today for the future of the next capital, so that by the time actually the island unfortunately sinks, we do have an alternative. So obviously climate action is extremely important for us. I mean, during this time, we wanted to reiterate our commitment as EIB. We are very proud of actually praising ourselves being the climate bank. We do have corporate commitments to climate adaptation, which is an area that remains underdeveloped. So we are working, of course, on also on the renewable energy, on forestries in Moldova. We are very proud of supporting through a 200 million loan a program that is providing critical infrastructure equipment, but also work on the governance. We expect to actually help restore and rehabilitate about 63,000 hectares of degraded lands and forests. So I hope these examples give you a sense of what we do. I mean, if you are interested, we can have a much longer session to walk you through the diversity. And there are also plenty of material on our website that I encourage you to visit. Over to you, Richard.
Thanks very much, Thoraya. And maybe just as a link to the next part of our webinar, I will also add a personal one of mine, which is one I was responsible for, is an operation we did in the health sector just in the last 18 months with the European Commission, with the Gates Foundation, with the World Health Organization, and with UNICEF, all in support of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. So this is where we provided a loan, a large loan, to help UNICEF and the World Health Organization really roll out vaccines and roll out the delivery of those vaccines in some of the most remote parts of the world. That is, from a personal perspective, one I'm very, very proud of EIB Global's involvement. And that actually, if I might, leads very nicely into our next section, which is impact, right? I mean, you've heard from all of those examples that Thoraya has given us those great examples about how we're supporting the private sector, how we're supporting the public sector, yes, for important infrastructure development, for private sector development, but also really though, what this is about is making a difference on the ground. So what we've just done in the chat, and you will see, and we will also make available when we circulate the webinar, is actually the EIB Global Impact Report of 2023, which is the last one that's publicly available. But we are going to give you a bit of a sneak preview, actually, of the 2024 Impact Report. This will actually only be launched in, I think it's about 10 days' time, in June in Sevilla at the Financing for Development conference that is starting in a few days' time. And this is just now the really, as I say, this early sneak preview of our 2024 impact. And this is, if I might say, this is the reason why we're here. This is why Thoraya and I and our teams, why we work for EIB Global. This is the real world impact, the real world change that we're looking to deliver by the operations and the projects that we're supporting in the public sector and the private sector. We are proud of these achievements in health, in safe drinking water, in renewable energy generation, in public transport, in reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and in jobs. Jobs are so important for so many people. It has such a positive impact on people's lives. And this is, if I might, the manifestation of our engagement. And I think that this is really important for you as well, for you working in foundations, is the approach that we take, that we check on possible outcomes and impacts as whenever we look at every single operation that we do. We review, we calculate, we monitor, and then we report. So we will give you reports, and we will provide reports on the impact of every single one of our operations in terms of SDG outcomes, like you see on the screen here, but also along other indicators that might be necessary or required on a deal-by-deal basis. And I think that's really important. It's really important for our legitimacy, and it's also really important for our credibility. So we take this management of impact extremely seriously. Look, maybe then I would move then to perhaps the next part of our discussion, which is really the opportunities and the possibilities that we might see for how European philanthropic foundations might look to partner and work with EIB. We're not looking here for funding per se, but rather we're really just trying to illustrate and show to you how we might work together on whether there are initiatives or operations or opportunities for cooperation, collaboration. So maybe then I would turn to you, Thoraya, for the next part. And really, where do you see opportunities for EIB Global, for GLOW, to join forces with EU foundations?
Now, thank you very much, Richard, and I'll try to be as concrete as possible,
Please.
Although I would like to underscore something very important that Richard has said. We see today's webinar as a first effort to establish a dialogue together, to understand how we work, with the hope that we can join forces. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're sitting here pitching for money, but we are here to understand or help you understand what we are doing, what we could deliver together, and if this is of interest to you, we can see how we join forces. And he mentioned earlier an exciting initiative where we are working with Gates. We, as given the fact that we are a European institution, we are actually very keen also to strengthen the collaboration with the European philanthropies, and that's the very background of this webinar. So now delving into concrete opportunities, and again, we're not. These are illustrative, so please, if you have anything exciting, reach out to us. We are very open and flexible. But we thought that it would be good to give some concrete examples today. So I will actually provide maybe 3 avenues, if you allow me, Richard. The first one is probably the most advanced and concrete. So as a background, EIB is a major financier to support gender equality. We have been investing in significant amount of resources, be it in infrastructure projects, to provide the safe transportation to women, to provide economic opportunities, jobs, to support female entrepreneurs. So we have been very successful, including through some female dedicated program and women dedicated initiatives. But what we have realized with the intensification of the pace of climate adverse events, with the intensification also of adverse development, be it conflict, be it shocks like COVID, these events are wiping out sometimes in a week the results or the hard work and investment that have been for a while. So we thought that although we have been successful in supporting gender economic development, we need to increasingly put into the picture the concept of resilience, that we need to work on resilience, female livelihood. So we are actually very proud to push now for this new initiative, which is a gender investment partnership, where we want to build on our lending capabilities. We provide a lot of loans to banks with the focus on women entrepreneurs. We provide project finance, corporate finance. It could be also public sector loans. But we want to invest with a key objective, which is building resilience, livelihood to women. One question you may ask: what makes this initiative exciting or relevant, and why a new partnership? There are 2 key reasons that decided that, or 2 things that we are particularly proud of that we embedded in the design of this program. The first one is that while there is a lot of talk about the concept of resilience, there's very little on the actual operationalization. If today you go to a bank and you ask, what do you need to invest in to ensure that this is a resilient livelihood, there will be a lot of issues. So what we want to do is combine our financing with what I would call an evidence-based agenda to really dig into the concept, to learn from the investment that we made, so that with the data, we can also influence and direct the money to investment that would make a difference and an impact. And this is something that could deliver impact beyond the simple actually intervention that we will have through our own financing. The second important unique feature of this partnership is that very often when we talk about resilience, we talk about resilience to climate change, resilience to food security, to hunger, resilience to health. But the reality is that these different risks are connected, they're interdependent. If there is a flooding somewhere, that could affect productivity and the capacity of women to have access to food. If there is a health shock on the woman, that affects her capacity to deal also with climate, to go and fetch for the water. So what we want also to embed into the design and the work we want to do is to recognize this interdependence between the three shocks and ensure that whatever we do is also focusing on the three shocks and not only treating them in a single manner. So we ambition to deploy about $1 billion, to mobilize $1 billion for this initiative. And we would be very happy if this is of interest to you to continue this conversation and see how we can leverage on each other work to deliver greater impact. So that's the first.
Gender.
That's gender. The second one is climate. So as we mentioned at the beginning, we are very proud of labeling ourselves as being the climate bank. We do have a roadmap, corporate commitments that we follow, and we use a very wide range of tools actually to deliver impact. Here, the opportunities are less concrete, but we can actually operate with a variable geometry, depending also on your interests and also the programs that you may have. But it could actually be in the form of advisory services to complement some of the financing we provide, could be ex ante to prepare a project or ex post to support the implementation, could be technical assistance, it could be impact assessment, it could be something to the risk instruments, including for the private sector. You know that the governments in and a lot of geographies are facing reduced fiscal space to act. So catalyzing private sector financing is extremely important. Pooling of funds to certain purposes. So these are some of the forms, and we would be very happy to hear from you. Last but not least, Ukraine. As you have seen in the video, Ukraine is one of our priorities. We are supporting, of course, we cannot do humanitarian, but we are really supporting much needed investments to build and strengthen their resilience. And here would be very interested in any partnerships. I mean, again, the forms are not determined, but we would be very happy to brainstorm with you to ensure that together we support the country through this very difficult times. So again, these are some of the topics, but as I said, if you have more, we would be more than happy to hear and follow up with you.
Thanks very much, Daria, for that overview. And I think it's really important, as you rightly say, in these very straitened geopolitical, geostrategic times that we in Europe and we in the European Union, we stand forward and we maintain our commitments to gender equality, and to climate. And certainly EIB Global, we will be playing our part on those two very existential questions of importance for us. And indeed on Ukraine, as you rightly say, the critical security and defense and moral question that we have in our continent right now. So look, you've given some very good examples of how we might engage, whether that's in co-financing arrangements, whether that's via technical assistance or capacity building with governments, whether that's working on feasibility studies, impact assessments, or whether that's also even on the research agenda, where some of our counterparts or our own partners might serve as research partners alongside you. I think maybe just to round this point off is indeed we are also open to your suggestions and priorities. And the example I gave before around our work with the Gates Foundation and the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, this has been a long-standing priority of the Gates Foundation for the last 15 years. And actually, working with them and working alongside them and finding those areas of common interest and common impact that we wish to deliver, we're very happy to dedicate that time and those efforts where we see that correlation of interest. So really, we do stand open to work with you on designing the right programs and the right initiatives at scale to deliver that systemic and systematic change. I think that this is what we at EIB are all about. So look, it was a real pleasure to be with you, and really for those online and for those who will see this in the future when we make it available, we're very happy that you've been with us, and we do give you the opportunity to ask questions or make suggestions. But while we do that and while you think about that, very happy to maybe launch one more video about our support for Ukraine in 2025. So please, Melanie, could you launch that for us now? Fantastic, thank you very much. Look, I understand we do have one question in the chat. Look, and so I would ask Hannah, maybe perhaps if you could read that out for us, and then we will take that and see where that leads from there. Thank you, Hannah, please.
Yes, thank you, Richard. The question is about our collaboration with the European Commission Global Gateway Initiative and our foundation members, that the foundation members of Filea, sorry, the question comes from Filea, are engaging with DG INPA on this. So it's the collaboration we have with the European Commission and its Global Gateway Initiative and INPA specifically.
Very good. Thank you, Hannah. Another Hannah from Filea on that. Appreciate that question. Maybe Thoraya, would you like to just talk about how we engage with DG INPA on Global Gateway?
Yeah. So as I showed you earlier, we are present in a very large number of countries, and obviously some of these geography entail significant risk. We work with the Commission very closely as they provide very valuable guarantees that actually allow us to de-risk some of these investments. So that's on the pure operational side. Now on the policy side, we emphasized in the beginning that because also of our nature as the EU bank, we pursue the policy priorities. Global Gateway is the EU key strategy outside the Union. The sectors have been defined. There is a dialogue that very often is led by DG INPA with the governments. That is very often summarized, in a list of common or joint priorities. So as EIB, when we engage in a country, we very much follow these priorities and we try to serve them. The idea is not to show that the EU is not just talking to the country, that we are delivering the financing to implement the projects. So we work very closely with INPA because we follow these policy priorities. So if there is, if the Amazon is defined as a flagship and the global gateway for Brazil and for LAG, this is something that we will definitely try to pursue. Same, I mentioned earlier, the forestry in Moldova. Again, that's not DG INPRA, but it's the European Commission. So we follow very much the policies and the objective that has been set, and we ensure that we are part of the toolkit that actually the European Commission can use to implement Global Gateway. We are a major contributor of Global Gateway results, and we have actually even corporate commitments on the amount that we would finance and catalyze thanks to our investments to deliver on this very important agenda.
Indeed, those commitments, we promised that we would mobilize 100 billion of the 300 billion total global gateway commitment, so that the EIB would be responsible for that. And to date, in advance of the 2027 deadline, we've already hit the 80 billion mark, so well on track to deliver our share of that global gateway investment agenda well in advance of the original timeline. And we certainly expect a global gateway 2.0 to be coming very soon from the European Commission with regard to our external activity. But a great question. Thank you very much for that. So I would like to thank everybody again for your attention, for your engagement, and for those who will be seeing this online. We're very grateful. Please do reach out. Please do let us know if you have any questions. We'd be very happy to answer any of those and see how we might work together. I also, finally, just one thing, I would like to thank the team for all of their hard work in preparing today's webinar and for our tech support. Thank you very much for that. Without you, this wouldn't have been so seamless and straightforward. So thanks to you all. And I wish to close today by wishing everybody a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.